Hello, Manchester, and welcome to another edition of Girard at Large. I am your feeling that little touch of fall in the air host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, you can find us online at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, also at Girard at Large, where we encourage you to like us and to follow us. Why? Well, let's just say we keep it entertaining. 603-698-3233 is the number that you can call if you'd like to share anything tonight, 603-698-3233. Well, we have a big show tonight, so we're going to get right to it. First, we're going to give you our Jim O'Connell parking update, because the man apparently still can't find the parking lot that's 75 to 80 paces away from the front door. So he's got to park where no parking is allowed, but at least, this is from last week, at least he's not blocking the handicap ramp anymore, so we have to give kudos to Jim O'Connell for at least not blocking the handicap ramp because he's too lazy or entitled to walk from the dedicated parking spot that supports his building and, has to just roll himself out onto the curb. So while we're on the topic of pictures, let's give you some of our homeless pictures tonight. So this is a fellow pushing his grocery cart down Elm Street. That's at the intersection with the Notre Dame Bridge. Yes, it's nice to see that they're still there with their shopping carts. Next up. Oh, this is at the intersection of 2nd Street and Queen City Avenue. This is headed, west out to Bedford, right before you take a left onto the Queen City Bridge. And what's that? Well, that's a chair apparently being held in place by some bottle containers with a bag of trash in front of it. This is where homeless folks camp out now. And speaking of where homeless folks camp out, let's go to the next picture. The fellow here, this is on Wellington Road. It's creeping further east. This industrious gentleman is on Wellington Road at the intersection of the 93 on-ramp headed, that's headed south. So that's the south on-ramp. So got a picture of him there. And I want to give kudos, and I'm drawing a blank on his name as I think about it. Who's the fellow running for alderman in Ward 9 against Burkish? I'll post his information underneath the Facebook Live at girardatlarge.com, because I've come across some material that he's been posting, and he is the first candidate that I have seen address the panhandling ordinance that this city passed back in 2017 that the court tossed in 2018 because of an ACLU lawsuit. The court actually, invalidating the ordinance, said, here's what's wrong with it, and basically told the city what to do to fix it. And it looks like this person has done his homework and actually found a way to provide a new ordinance to handle this panhandling. Of course, the other thing that the city could do, in addition to changing the ordinances, is it could simply just go to the intersections where these people are camping out, and instead of having these nice flat surfaces for them to park their bicycles, their carriages, pull their wagons, be with their dog, sit, and hold their signs and otherwise pace up and down. A lot of communities in Massachusetts have done this where they make it impossible to walk on. So instead of a flat concrete surface, it's all like granite blocks and stones, and it's uneven and it's impossible to stand on, never mind walk on. And the complaints with the whatchamacallits, from the homeless people or the vagrants that are panhandling, they complain that it's medieval what they're doing. So, there are some public works initiatives that could be undertaken by the city to take care of this, and it probably should look at doing something. I was at the intersection of Salmon Street and Elm, which is the Amoskeag Bridge. And, and unfortunately you see this happening more often than it should when a car taking a right onto the bridge heading south on Elm decides to stop right after taking the right onto West Salmon Street as it heads toward the bridge so that she can call the panhandler with his puppy who's sitting in his chair with his bicycle lying down next to him in the median, can get up, walk into the roadway, and she handed him some kind of food container or sandwich or something, which was really nice, except the car behind her that almost rear-ended her because she wasn't paying attention wasn't very happy about it, and she had traffic backed up. By the time she, done her deed, the light had changed again. But in this city, it doesn't matter because people just run the red lights. I was amazed as I was at the intersection of Lake and Elm today coming to the studio, where there literally is a cop on every corner so that when the walk signs come up, they come off the corners and they walk a few feet into the intersection and they wave the pedestrians on as if the walk signs are incapable of doing that. And, as it's blinking red and the countdown's coming, they go back to their corners. But literally, with every pass of the light, and I sat there for three sections of light, cars heading in all directions would run those lights, and the cops just stood there on the corner. So clearly nobody takes Manchester as a place for traffic enforcement seriously. But now, and I saw crossing over the Notre Dame Bridge, right, heading west, a car crossed over, literally stopped dead in the middle of the lane just after he crossed over Elm on the bridge side of the bridge to hand money to a panhandler who was standing there. I mean, folks, this stuff is dangerous. But you got that traffic sign. This was sent to me by a listener of our show, and it's how traffic works everywhere else. Go slow, stop, and in Manchester, go faster, and check if no police, then go. The only quarrel I would have with that is they don't bother to check if there are no police. They're pretty sure there aren't going to be any because they just cruise on through, and it's a routine thing in this city now. It's just about any light you stop at, what do? 2, 3, sometimes as many 4 cars will roll right through. But it's not just stop lights, it's stop signs. Literally on my way here tonight, as I was driving down Chestnut Street to get here, had a car roll through a stop sign at Lowell Street, only to stop because, they realized there was traffic coming, and someone rolled through the light on Amherst Street, literally, and the alleyway between Amherst and Hanover Street, a guy with a Maryland plate didn't even bother to look. Not only did he roll into that intersection right in front of me, he managed to put himself into the left lane, so he blocked traffic in 2 lanes coming out of the alleyway. And then I won't even tell you what happened at the corner of Chestnut and Lake because that was just so much fun. And this is, Troy Micklin. Thank you, Lorraine, from Facebook Live. Troy Micklin in Ward 9. That guy has got a great blog. I was looking at it today because I saw some of his posts up in the Manch Vegas News site on Facebook, which I would encourage you to join. Manch Vegas News in Facebook. It's a private group, so only members are allowed to post and only members are allowed to see. It's got over 4,300 members, and yours truly is one of the administrators of that page. So if you want to see some really good stuff, Troy Micklin has been putting up some really good stuff, including about the Old Egg Coffee Center at 39 Beach Street, where he put up a tremendous post showing a radius around, it was like a quarter-mile radius around 39 Beach Street and all of the reported crimes in the area. Speaking of which, Ross Terrio in Ward 7, so desperate to get it out of his ward because Tom Bezoyan, the Democrat running against him, is just beating him to death over it. Word on the street is that Terrio is trying to get the city to move the engagement center at 39 Beach Street up to the now vacant Wilson Street Elementary School. Not Wilson, the Henry Wilson Elementary School, which is not on Wilson Street, but is on Jewett Street. And he's trying to get the city, the alderman, to say, hey, let's use this abandoned school in the middle of an already distressed, highly densely populated neighborhood for the whatchamacallit, for the homeless shelter and engagement center. I don't know where that's going to go, but that would be a disaster for that neighborhood. And at some point, folks, we have to realize that no matter where this thing goes, it's going to be a disaster. And then we have to ask ourselves a very honest question. And I think it's worth a very serious discussion, and that is, does the city really have a role to play in providing these services? I think it is true that when you have these services available, that you attract people who are looking for all-day coffee and everything that they get from the city of Manchester that enables them to stay on the streets. The growing numbers of people being served are evidence of the fact. And of course, they're not honestly going to even collect where people are from now, because when they were doing that, it was, and the numbers were showing that more than 3/4 of the people on the streets were not from the city of Manchester, not even close, had no association with the city of Manchester. It becomes a running disaster. And Manchester, like it or not, has gained a reputation where the homeless can come and get everything they need, be left alone while they're shooting up wherever it is they're shooting up. They're not hassled when they're panhandling. They're not arrested when they're crapping on picnic tables at Creamland. Which gets us into what's happening on the West Side, right? If you see the Facebook post, the crime spree on the West Side, a whole rash, more than a dozen different streets have had multiple break-ins to cars where people's stuff is being stolen. And, you got to wonder, the police put out a thing saying, hey, Manchester Police is looking for your help. They're asking people to provide surveillance camera footage, even though the report that got put out said that surveillance cameras in the area had been tampered with, sabotaged, or otherwise disabled while people, which was enabling these people to go through and do the break-ins. But you got to wonder whether or not the Manchester Police Department is really going to do anything about it, because the bail reform that got pushed through the state of New Hampshire, which is the number one reason why the Manchester Police Department has given publicly and to me personally about why they're not more aggressive in issuing tickets against all of these vagrants. I mean, absent the time where Jay Ruhe came up with $500,000 in federal funds so that cops could go on extra detail pay and overtime pay to do what apparently they can't manage to do during the day shift. This was under Oldenburg. And issue a bunch of tickets. There was this grand flurry, and then what? What happened? What happened? Did they really take anybody off the street? Oh no, because we need bail. We need to get rid of the bail reform because we write the ticket. And Chief Oldenburg told this to me himself. He said, we write them the ticket, they tear it up, and they throw it on the ground. I looked at him seriously. I said, well, why don't you write him another one for littering? I mean, at what point does it become disorderly conduct and you can actually do something a little more severe than write a ticket? At what point does the court get the point that there is a problem with this person or these groups of people because of the sheer volume of citations they've been issued? So the Manchester Police Department is very much of the opinion that going after these people is a waste of time because bail reform is going to have them out on the street before they can even finish the arrest paperwork. And so while certain people like the mayor of this city crow about their success in getting bail reform passed, and I don't poo-poo what passed, but the fact of the matter is that until and unless New Hampshire goes back to the way it was before bail reform was enacted in 2018, then we're going to continue to have these issues. They can write all of the tickets they want. They can make all of the arrests that they want, but they're not going to be held. They're not going to be caused to be, sent to the hoosgow waiting for their thing, because it would be unfair, according to the ACLU and the knuckleheads who passed this legislation. It's unfair for these people who are poor and indigent and can't afford bail to sit in jail until they have their hearing. So they release them so they can continue to commit crime over and over and over again, as more than 1 out of every 4 currently does. So there you go. That is, what else do I have for pictures? Oh yes, let's show the pictures. While we're talking about, trouble in the South End with 39 Beach Street, not too far from there is a place called St. Anthony's Park. And St. Anthony's Park, well, it would be safe to say it's seen better days. And we've got some stuff from a neighbor to the park. And these really aren't the best pictures. But he has been in sort of a pitched battle with the highway department, has this Christopher fellow. I won't give his last name. But he has been trying to get them to do, basic maintenance work at that park, cutting back the overgrowth, clearing out the brush, taking, as you saw, those rotted rail ties and removing them because they're a hazard. And in one of the emails, he was told that, all of this stuff would have to be put into a CIP project to get it done. And he sent an email to me along with these pictures asking, why would the cleanup of garbage and rotten wood curbing be able to be used under the current budget? Apparently they said that the only way they can clean it up is with the CIP budget. What is that? That's when they're going to do a major overhaul of a place, and they put either through bonding or cash, they put, it means it's a big ticket item, okay? Just thought you might have a flat tire due to a nail or something that would come under the budget. If so, why wouldn't cleanup of garbage come under the budget because of CIP? So there are basic maintenance things that really need to be done to St. Anthony's Park, and this has been a long-suffering park in a pretty nice residential neighborhood in the South End for many years. I remember when I was campaigning for mayor back in 2021, I did a number of streets around that park, and I heard from the neighbors in spades about how neglected that park was and how the garbage made it really difficult for them to use. There are athletic fields there too that kids are supposed to be able to use. The overgrowth was hiding all kinds of vagrant activity, among other things. It was just a mess. And I'm sorry, it doesn't need to be a CIP park to send in a couple parks crews, clear out the trash, clean up the overgrowth, pull out the invasive growth, take care of all of the broken stuff, and just do some basic maintenance until an actual overhaul of that park can be done. But this is life in the city of Manchester, and these are the little things that city policymakers and public works departments, police departments, whatnot, you name it. No one's got time to hand out tickets. No one's got time to do traffic enforcement. No one's got time to go clean up the parks. No one fill in the blank. And meanwhile, we all scratch our little wooden heads, wonder why real estate in the city of Manchester has a difficult time competing with similar properties in neighboring towns, why, as Bob Baines admitted in a public hearing in 2021, the middle class is leaving this city. Speaking of budgets, right? Manchester hasn't seen an actual cut to its budget since, dirt was new or Christ was a child. And meanwhile, many of the towns around us, including some of the big ones like Goffstown, Hooksett, and Bedford, their voters said no across the board to not only a number of capital projects that would have issued bonds that caused their tax rates to go up, but they said no to increases in the operating budgets. And now these it's kind of funny, these town people, the managers are fretting, we're not going to be able to give pay raises, and we're not going to be able to fill positions, and we're going to have to make these terrible cuts. I mean, and for the fact that voters said no, you're not increasing taxes, you're not increasing taxes, you're not increasing spending. The actual budgets that they're cutting, they weren't that severe, but typical of government, they can never find a more efficient way to do anything. It's give us more, give us more, give us more. But and that's really too bad why Chrissy Cantor dropped out, or no one is challenging Jay Ruhe from the right, because the taxpayers in this city are damn angry over what have been 2 years, the last 2 years in the city of Manchester, and you're going to find this out. We'll see if they have the balls to put out the tax rate and get it set before the election. When one of the tricks that they like to play is, they won't announce the new tax rate until after the election, which was standard course. But I remember working for Ray Wazorek back in the day, and Wazorek ordered city departments to get all of the data they needed to get to the State Department of Revenue Administration by the time necessary, soon enough that the tax rate would come out before the election happened, so that voters weren't blindsided by the coming tax hike after the fact, and they could hold the people who gave them that tax hike accountable. Will that happen here? I don't know. But with what happened last year with a nearly 4% increase in the tax rate and what happened this year, the taxes in Jay Rouet's term will have gone up by more under his 2 years as mayor than they have since any mayor going all the way back to Bob Baines. So this is not a fiscal conservative. This is not someone who would never raise your taxes. This is not someone who's, prioritized and reduced spending to finally give you a tax cut. And so I've had a lot of you say to me, I was talking to somebody that I bumped into at BJ's over the weekend while I was spending a ridiculous amount of money shopping. And, he said to me, yeah, I backed away last time. He said, I've got buyer's remorse. He said, but what am I going to do? Who else is out there to vote for? And I said, you're right. There is nobody out there to vote for. I said, but the fact remains, Rouet is going to win this election because Jessica Spillers is going to make Chris Herbert look like a big vote getter. And for those of you who don't remember, Chris Herbert ran against Ted Gatsas back in 2015, I think it was, when Teddy was running for his first reelection bid. And I don't think he got 5,000 votes in the election. It was a washout. I'll give Chris credit for standing against the tide and going out there and telling people what he really believed. The Democrats abandoned him, though, just like they're going to abandon Spillers in this one and put their money into the ward races. But, Spillers is going to be down in that category. Nobody knows her, including in Ward 8, where she is, a one-time school board race. But despite that, 32%, according to a recent poll, 32% of the people in Manchester are undecided about who they're going to vote for in the coming election. It's not exactly a ringing endorsement of Rouet, although his support does break 50%. Interesting, they gave his, approval ratings with Democrats and independents, but they didn't give his approval ratings with Republicans. I wonder why. Probably because they wouldn't be stellar. But if you are, if you're unhappy with the fact that the taxpayers don't have somebody running at the top of the ticket, then I would encourage you, and I told this to the, to the person, we'll call him Stanley, even though his name was Pete, but we'll call him Stanley. And we'll say, and I said, just leave it blank. Write somebody in. I said, Rouet is going to run for Congress. There's no question about it in my mind. And, a guy who's got more than $500,000 in the bank before he sends out his first fundraising letter, and then sends out another one, when he's got over $500,000 in the bank and he's running against a no-name, unknown, person for mayor, He's looking to rack up the score so he can have some gravitas when he runs for Congress. But, if, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 people leave the mayor's race, blank, they don't vote in it, or they write someone or something in, that's going to send a message to Republicans on a statewide level that Jay Rouet does not necessarily have the undying love and unbridled commitment of the conservatives here in the Queen City. And the more empty ballots there are, the more write-ins there are, the louder that message gets. And so this person said to me, he said, well, I'll write you in. I said, well, you can do that. I said, I'm not going to campaign for it, and I'm not going to win if I do. But if the whole point is to send a message, you've got to do that. Because the danger here is people like that are like, all of a sudden, they're not motivated to go and vote. Now, if they're not motivated to go and vote, that means a substantial percentage of them will not go and vote. And what happens when a substantial percentage of them don't go out and vote? Well, what happens is down ballot races, Republicans lose. So there are some actual really good people running in the ward races, like this fellow Troy Micklin from Ward 9. Every Republican in Ward 9, everyone who's unhappy with taxes and spending in Ward 9, everyone who's unhappy with the crime and the homeless vagrancy that is just ruining entire neighborhoods in Ward 9 needs to get out there and vote. And if there are Republicans staying home because they're ticked off at Jay Rouet or they feel abandoned, well, then guys like Troy Micklin aren't going to get votes. And that's the way it is. So send your message. Leave it blank. Write somebody in. Do it in sizable numbers. And vote for the Republicans for the school board and the aldermen in the down ballot races. Because if you're not going to get a real Republican as the mayor, no matter what you do right now, you might as well put enough people into office that Republican and the Republicans on the board have on a couple of occasions, forced Roué to be a Republican, but you're going to have to make it so that it's not a tie vote. They're going to have to make it so that there are some real Republicans there, so that there are 8 Republicans on the board, maybe 9, who are going to tell the mayor the way it's going to be, because they're going to work with Chrissy Cantor, and they're going to work with Ed Sapienza, and they're going to work with Joe Lavasser, and they're going to get Republican things done for the taxpayer. That's what needs to happen. So with that, I guess it's time to talk Pickles. Picklegate, which I didn't get a chance to get to last week, but you may be aware that there is this raging controversy in the city of Manchester because the health department issued a cease and desist letter to a fellow named Daniel Mowery, who's a very active community member in Ward 6, lives over on Holt Ave. He's done things like, create, block parties, and, he's just a very active guy. Big supporter of Chrissy Cantor, one-time loud critic of mine, but he came around, and we are now, we're chummy, we're buds. All in all, he just, like so many of us, is up to here with what's happening in this city, and he's been very loud about it. Well, the problem with Mr. Mowery is apparently he's actually made some enemies. And how does the health department, so here's the story. He makes pickles. He grows vegetables on a farm, on a nearby farm, and he brings them back to his house, and he does just like my dear old mom used to do, makes bread and butter pickles. Good. And so what he did was, and he's apparently done this for years, what he did was he put up a post on Facebook. And he said, with a picture of the, the pickle jars and everything else, and he said, hey, pickles are ready. And he's done this for years. Pickles are ready if anybody's interested. He will distribute the pickles, and that, of course, set off all kinds of alarm bells. Well, somebody took a picture of his post and anonymously reported him to the health department. Now, there are some suspects in this anonymous reporting, and I'm going to share what my sources have told me and why. One of them is Maxine Mosley. Maxine Mosley is running for alderman in Ward 6. Well, apparently what happened a couple years ago was Mr. Mowery was having a block party with and for his neighbors. He does it for his neighborhood. If you do not live in that neighborhood, you're not allowed. Well, Mosley and a few other Democrats showed up because they thought they were going to glad hand and campaign. They were told that was not the purpose of it. They did not live there. They did not have any association with anybody who lived there, and they were asked to leave. Shortly after they were asked to leave, the police showed up and shut down the neighborhood block party because they did not go through the city to get a permit, and they did not hire a police detail to police their friendly neighborhood barbecue. Now, he no longer does the block party because hiring an extra detail cop breaks the bank, and so now they go to some church parking lot nearby, and they hold a scaled down version of the party there. So obviously Maxine Mosley got her nose bent out of joint, called the police about this illegal block party that she was not allowed to enter, and so goes the story. And so there is speculation that Mosley again did this, or it could be our good friend Rosanna McMahon, because Rosanna McMahon, being the the vicious anti-Chrissy Cantor person that she is, who apparently also has it out for Daniel Mowery, according to my sources. Mowery, who is a big backer of Chrissy Cantor and several other Republicans in this city, and the person who decided that she was going to report Chrissy Cantor for stealing, binders of personal information, which she didn't do. The same person that the police did not require go to the police station as part of their investigation of the false claim charges that were filed, et cetera, et cetera. So, there is broad speculation that this was all precipitated by either a complaint from Mosley or a complaint from Rosanna McMahon. And of course, what do we have but a health department that refuses to release the complaint itself, claiming that it's not subject to the right to know law because it's anonymous. And if you were to ask me, any anonymous complaints should be immediately discarded by the city of Manchester, because there's a basic constitutional right in this country under the Fifth Amendment. It's called you get to face your accusers. Granted, it's in a court of law, but some of these things do end up in court, and the city never coughs up who the anonymous complaint was. Nonetheless, there is a law here in the state of New Hampshire that has what's called a homestead exemption. The homestead exemption says that if you're selling fewer than less than $20,000 worth of product, you don't need to, meet health requirements. However, there's a catch in the law that gives municipalities the ability to regulate where the state doesn't. And so the City of Manchester ordinance says, oh no, if you're going to do anything like that, then you need to have a commercial kitchen, and we have to inspect, and we have to do this and do that, and we have to go through all of this hullabaloo. And basically, so just be aware, if you tick off a neighbor and you're the kind of person who likes to, bring baked goods at Christmas time, or, brings over, a mercy meal for, neighbors who are suffering with sickness or are recovering from something. If you cook for your school's bake sales, you are technically violating the ordinances of the city of Manchester, and you can be told to cease and desist, your product confiscated, and you're not allowed to do any of this. So there is a move at the state level to change the law. It's being led in part by Kathy Paquette, who's a candidate for alderman in Ward 5 and also a current state rep from Ward 5. Paquette and several Manchester Republicans have come forward, including Brian Cole from Ward 7, who is running for Congress. Brian, they have come forward and said, you know what, we need to make some changes to state laws so that municipalities can't engage in this kind of abusive overreach, because at the end of the day, he's not doing this to, I think he made something like 2 or 3 dozen jars of pickles. People are talking, oh, he's getting paid. No, he says, my understanding is he's not charging anybody anything, but if people ask, the pickling jars cost him $3, so they're welcome to make donations to help him cover his costs. Yeah, this is the enterprise that the City of Manchester Health Department is losing its mind over. Meanwhile, you've got state reps like David Priest from Ward 2 who seem to think that the changes that are being sought to state laws so that communities can't be more restrictive in these areas than the state law requires. Seems to think that the ability for Western civilization to, surveil and take steps to protect the public health is going to come to a crashing end if, instead of Manchester's overly restrictive standard, we simply have a law that says, yeah, you have a homestead exemption, and if you don't surpass the homestead exemption, then you don't need to get any health authorities at the state or local level involved. Somehow that is going to be a catastrophe for public health in the state of New Hampshire if the law is changed. Now, meanwhile, Joe Levasseur, the alderman at large, is pushing to change the ordinance in the city of Manchester so that it is no more restrictive than the state law. And there are some people who believe that that is the right approach, that we shouldn't remove local control and allow communities like Manchester and about a dozen others around the state who have restrictions that are tighter than what the state has. We shouldn't interfere with their ability to be unreasonable with their citizens, under this doctrine of state, of local control. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of local control, but at the end of the day, to understand New Hampshire is to understand that New Hampshire, as I've told you many times, is simply not a local control state. We are not a home rule. We are not a home rule state. What a home rule state is that cities and towns have the ability to do anything they want so long as state law does not prohibit them from doing it. See, New Hampshire is the exact opposite. In New Hampshire, cities and towns may only do those things that state law specifically allows them to do. If state law is silent on the matter, then it's automatically prohibited, which is why so much of the legislation that goes through the State House every year is called enabling legislation, meaning it's a piece of legislation being passed that will enable either every city and town or every school district or water district or village district or whatever, subunit of government it is to do something, or many times it's to allow a specific community or a specific school district or a specific, water village district to do something it needs to do. That is the entire legal setup in the state of New Hampshire. And there are some free staters in this state who are pushing the idea that we need to become a home rule state and completely invert the legal paradigm here in the state of New Hampshire. And while that might sound nice, giving local communities the ability to make their own decisions on a vast and broad scale, when you think back and realize that New Hampshire has been making laws this way since 1789, and the entire legal scheme upon which our communities have been built is predicated on that premise, it really becomes a thicket you don't want to get into. And there really isn't a lot to argue that the state of New Hampshire, for the fact that it is a mother may I state and not a local control state, a local option state, does pretty well by its communities. So that is the latest on Picklegate, and there is a certain unreasonableness to the health department, but to understand how we got here in the first place, we have to understand that it was probably someone who just doesn't like Mr. Mowry, knowing that he's a key supporter of somebody like Chrissy Cantor, and has been a key Republican, activist in Ward 6 for many years now. To understand, and he's a big supporter of Senator Victoria Sullivan, to understand that this is nothing more than somebody weaponizing, if I can use the term, the health department against a citizen because they don't like them, probably because he didn't let a bunch of politicians come to his neighborhood block party, which wasn't there for people to come by generally. They were there because, they were neighbors and they were having a friendly neighborhood block party, which they can't have in their neighborhood anymore because if they do, they have to pay police extra detail, and it's probably not just one cop for a minimum of 4 hours, it's probably 2, and that becomes a really big bill for a neighborhood block party. So they don't do it in the neighborhood anymore. They do it on a private property in a nearby church parking lot. So that's the Pickles. Now we're going to go to schools. Actually, before we go to schools, there's something I want to hit too. Tonight at the Zoning Board of Adjustment, there is yet another property on Brook Street near one that was illegal. One that was it illegal? No. The way they're operating it now at the corner of Brook and Elm, which according to neighbors, they've got more than 20 people coming and going from a property at which no more than 12 are allowed. But there's one not even a block away. Formosa LLC, if I recall correctly, is the name of the company. It owns more than 100 units in the city of Manchester, and they want to take a nearby property and turn it into a boarding house, which will, and they want to stuff 14 people into this one property as a boarding house. The problem is that Formosa has quite the track record here in the city of Manchester, multiple violations over multiple years that I didn't bring the paper, so I don't want to say anything with specificity because I don't want to misspeak, but safe to say that they have they have done their tenants no favors by the way they've maintained their properties over the years. And the concern here is not, is that the zoning board is going to do what the zoning board has been doing, and that is saying, oh my, oh my, oh my, we need affordable housing in this city. We need more housing in this city. So they've all but abandoned their quasi-judicial role as a body that's supposed to determine whether or not the use, the property can be used as it's zoned. And they've been issuing all kinds of decisions, many of which we've gone over here, on grounds that have nothing to do with how they're supposed to make their decisions. So the neighbors are very concerned that the zoning board is going to look at this as an affordable housing thing and not whether or not it's appropriate for the neighborhood, especially given the track record of the management company. So, all right, I think I got that. And now, okay, that's my food stuff. Okay. Let's play the Jim O'Connell video first.
We suck at what we do. So
play it again. Just put on a loop.
So we suck at what we do.
All right, stop. So that's, for those of you on Facebook Live, it's a clip from his show saying we suck at what we do, because, he talks about the Manchester School District, and he's right. And to underscore that, let's show you this. This came from the meeting of August 11th. I've seen a lot of people go before the school board. I have never seen this. Oh, okay. I was trying to pick up Facebook. Oh, no! Yes, I want you to run the clip. No. I want you to run the clip. I'm turning it around so the Facebook Live camera can see it. No, the one that I sent you from the school board. No worries. Let's get it up. You don't have that? No, I didn't. Okay, well, there was a clip that was sent. I sent a clip. Apparently it didn't go through. Sometimes that happens. From a woman named Stacy Phillips. And Stacy Phillips is a mom that had a special needs child in the Manchester school, or she'll be in the Manchester schools until February. And special needs kids play by different rules. They get to go until, I believe, their 21st birthday. The girl was autistic. And are you sure you didn't get that? Because it did show in my sent folder. I double checked. Okay. And she was at the school board meeting on August 11th because her daughter's private information was exposed on the agenda, and it shouldn't have been, and she wanted to make sure that her daughter wasn't talked about in public session. So she gave this gut-wrenching testimony as the mom of a special needs kid about how the city of Manchester had simply failed her daughter over the 20-plus years, or the X number of years that her daughter had been in the system, including fighting her for over 3 years about why, about the school district's refusal to send her daughter to a school for autistic children, which once they did, her daughter went from being a violent, nonverbal autistic kid to a kid who was who had become verbal and who could was no longer violent, who could she could put on a plane and take to Disney anytime, which if you have any experience with autistic kids, is pretty remarkable. And she talked about her daughter being abused at school, having to call the police. I mean, it was unbelievable, and I'm really sorry I didn't make sure that clip went through. So 2 days ago, she posted on the on Facebook in the Manchester School chat thing, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, so due to a phone call from the school district saying they accidentally posted my daughter's private information on the agenda of this last school board meeting, I attended my first and probably my last school board meeting to make sure her private information wasn't discussed in open forum. As my daughter is due to age out of her specialized program for autism next year, it will likely be my last school board meeting. When they asked if there was anybody else that wanted to speak, I decided to go, and if anybody saw it, I'm sorry, I was emotional, and she was. It was, I don't get emotional often, but she made me emotional. But my daughter's journey through her education process after she was adopted, and that's the other thing, this lady adopted this child. She fought the state for 3 years while she was trying to adopt the child as a foster parent, and she and her husband had fostered, I think she said, 73 children over the years. God bless her. With the education process, she was adopted was a nightmare, made so much harder by the Manchester School District, and I told them so. Yeah, she did. I shared about the abuse and neglect at the hands of her teacher, the straight-out lies, at one point having the assistant superintendent for special ed, wanting to remove all of her educational goals from her IEP to focus only on behavior, the 3-year fight to get her a school that could meet her needs, a school that through hard work of her parents, and her school, and her sister have turned a nonverbal aggressive autistic child into a verbal non-aggressive person who has thrived, and how much farther along she would be if they had not made me fight for 3 years for that school. I told them that because I was going to throw a party when she graduates, not because of all the milestones that she got despite them, but because I don't have to deal with the Manchester School District anymore. I've literally had to fight for my child for 21 years to get even the basic safety. I told them that they need to remember that these other people, these are people, they're not statistics. They're not dollar signs, but they're people, and they need to remember that. Anybody that was watching, I'm sorry I was emotional, and when it comes to my kid, I get emotional. As I was standing over by the elevator to leave, someone from the school board came over and said a Mr. Roth would be calling me to talk about my daughter's journey. I just wanted to post here to make sure that the people that were around me, at the elevator, that might have heard that nobody's bothered to call me. They literally were saying that, in my opinion, just to save face to the people that were surrounding me that heard them say that someone was going to call me. It's not the first time I've been lied to by the school district. I hope it will be the last one as she's aging out. To the people still fighting the fight, I send you all the courage, thoughts, and prayers that you will need to do this journey. They do not make it easy, and I wish you well. And to the school district and board, I hope you took my thoughts to heart and look at these kiddos as people, not as dollar signs and statistics. And so, who is Mr. Roth? Well, I brought to your attention that the school district was hiring a Ryan Roth from a school district out in California. And apparently, he's the assistant superintendent that now oversees special ed. You know, after she became superintendent, Jennifer Camille chased off some extremely qualified people that were working very hard to change the dysfunctional culture around Manchester's special ed program. And she replaced them with people who really were not and still are not qualified to do the job. And I will tell you from my time on the school board, where I often heard from special ed parents, that the Manchester School District, yes, it's very expensive, but sometimes the Manchester School District, or I should say it can be very expensive, but sometimes the Manchester School District is penny wise and pound foolish. And the way we go about special ed in this district is completely ass backwards. And it's wrong. And I could give you examples. We do a lousy job collecting information so we can get reimbursed by Medicaid for children who qualify for Medicaid. We do a very lousy job informing parents who have private health insurance of what their private health insurance will cover for their child and why it's to their advantage. For example, if the child needs some sort of device for, some sort of medical device, every parent on the planet comes in and demands that the school district provide it, which of course is expensive, but it's also kind of stupid if you can get it elsewhere, because if the school district owns it, if the school district gets it, the school district owns it, and that child only gets to use it temporarily. If you get it from your health insurance, mom and dad, then it's yours and it stays with your child, and there's no question about that. So there are ways that the district can generate additional revenue by being better at collecting on Medicaid reimbursements. There are ways that the district can share with benefits the benefits of getting services provided through their private health insurance. There are all kinds of things, and from a programmatic point of view, if you take a look at the state test scores, and I was looking at these, and if I'm wrong, I will correct myself. But if you take a look at the state standardized test scores, one of the things you can do is you can break it out into subcategories. And if you look at children who have IEPs, individual education plans, or they have others generally characterized as special education. If you take a look at kids who are special education and their test scores, we have a 0% proficiency of special needs children in this district. And one thing you learn about a lot of special needs kids is that they're not stupid. They learn differently. And some of them have challenges. And those challenges need to be overcome. You know, I've had parents who themselves were teachers tell me about how their children were coded for a reading disability until they were in, say, middle school somewhere, where they were introduced to what we call the multisensory reading program here in the district, which is a phenomenal program that helps kids with difficulty reading learn to read. And it's based on something called phonemic awareness. You might better know it as phonics. Well, this problem child who was just about last in their class, all kinds of behavior issues, frustration, et cetera, because of a reading disability, well, it turns out that the reading disability was the curriculum used by the district from the time, the child was knee-high to a grape, because they failed to inculcate him phonemic awareness. In other words, they didn't teach him phonics. Once the kid was taught phonics, there was no longer a reading disability, and he was no longer dead last in the class. That person, she blossomed. And so, Manchester, when Amy Allen was the principal at Parker Varney School before she got made assistant superintendent, she completely reorganized how kids were taught in that school. And instead of, you're in the first grade, you're in the second grade, you're in the third grade, instead of doing it by grades, she broke kids up by their ability level in any given subject. So you might be a first grader, but you might be reading on the third grade level. You were going to read with other children who were at that reading level. You might have been a fourth grader, but you might only be reading at the second grade level. You were going to be reading at the second grade level. And when she started to do that, their test scores started to change. And something happened that very rarely happens in the city of Manchester, and that was a handful of kids, after a few months in that situation, stopped being special ed kids. They were taken off their IEPs. They no longer had a learning disability. They just were being taught at the level they were at with appropriate materials, and suddenly that school was hopping. Well, of course, she got promoted to assistant superintendent. People who came in before her kept it going a little bit, but not really. Then that person was moved to a different school because they applied to go to a different school, and the people who came in afterwards dismantled the program. Kind of like the same thing that happened at West High School with the STEAM Ahead program. It started out as one thing, and then it went to something completely different, and now what's the big deal? And of course, that one was sabotaged by the teachers because they didn't want all the, quote, good kids going to Manchester Community College to take those classes that were inferior to their own. And so when you take a look at what's happening in the Manchester School District, right? And so this guy, Ryan Roth, by the way, so he was let go from his school district in 2024. I shared all of this with you. I sent this material to Jen Camille, the superintendent of school, to inquire whether or not she knew about it, because parents were going to public school board meetings, parents of special ed kids who were sharing stories about how unresponsive the administration had been to the needs of their children, only to find out through an email in response to multiple inquiries that Mr. Ryan was on administrative leave and had been, they needed to contact so-and-so, and it was all, it was all this big deal. This was back in September, October of last year. So I asked Jen about that because I went to the website to find out if he was on the website, and he wasn't. And I sent inquiries via email and voicemail message to the HR people out there in California. They never got back to me, which tells me it's a personnel matter and they're not going to, they're not going to respond. And so I asked Camille back in May, after it was announced that he was hired, I said, the article announcing Ryan Roth's appointment says he's currently working at the school district in question. However, he's not on the website. Also, I found a meeting of his supposed school board back in October. I've attached a transcript of a parent's commentary regarding him. Are you aware of this? So given this, what is his actual status with his school district? By the way, is the attached picture of him. And that attached picture I sent came from a LinkedIn page that was, let's just say he was moonlighting at another job on LinkedIn where he didn't call himself Ryan Roth, he called himself Ryan R. And after I sent this email, I should have taken screenshots of everything before I did, but literally the next day, I thought to myself, I better go get screenshots. Both of his LinkedIn profiles that I found were gone. So she responded, she said, Mr. Roth resigned following our appointment, and as such, his name was removed from the webpage and updated with his replacement. Well, that's not true because his webpage, he had been given the heave-ho back in October. She was aware of what I sent, and as noted in item 1, he resigned from his previous position. Well, did he resign because he got a new job? Because according to public information, he was gone back in September, October timeframe. And of course, she can't respond to anything in detail because they're personnel matters, even though they're not personnel matters for anything that happened here in New Hampshire. He was comfortable with her, giving me this limited information. And she said, yeah, it appears to be him. And that picture that appeared to be him was a picture. It was a picture on that second LinkedIn page that I found about him. So this is who we've got now running our, overseeing our special ed operation. That's the Mr. Roth that was brought up here. And apparently Mr. Roth was similarly unresponsive to parents back in his former school district. But hey, this is the same school district that hired somebody who, to be a curriculum coordinator. What was her name? Erin Murphy, I think it was. And I'm not sure if she's still working for the school district, actually. I have to look into that. But yeah, she got fired from her job because she was publicly trashing parents on social media. I won't repeat what she said because I'm not sure I remember every word or every detail, but let's just say it wasn't flattering. It got her fired, but Manchester hired her because Manchester didn't know about it, they told me at the time, because they had a policy against looking people up on social media, so they were unaware of it, even though it hit the local press in Cleveland where she was from. In any event, I am your ever humble host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, be good, be well, don't do anything we wouldn't do. We're proud to have in the audience. Thanks so much for being there. Good night, everyone.